as we provide for those that we serve. We pray that you will keep your hand of protection on our military, both here and abroad. Keep them safe as they protect the freedoms that we enjoy at home. We pray that you will be with our chief, deputy chief, this body, as we do the things that lead the Cherokee people. Be with us as we go home this evening and bring us back again. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. Roll call, Shelley.
Yes, ma'am. Janice Taylor.
I'm here.
Joe Deere. Keith Austin.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Joe Bird.
Honey.
Julia Coates. Sean Crittenden.
Here.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Kanan Duncan. Rex Jordan.
Here.
Daryl Legg.
Here.
Wes Snowfire.
Honey.
Dora Petzkowski.
Here.
Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw. E.O. Smith.
Here.
Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Awesome. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, April 29th. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposition? This is down to our committee reports. I do not see Chuck Garrett, so we're going to move on to Trey Lena, Treasurer Scott. Oh. Yeah, she's right there, though. We will come back to Chuck if, I think he was going to join us virtually. I'm not sure what's going on, so we'll move on and have his report when he gets here. Take it away, Trey.
Okay, thank you. So you guys have my normal monthly report in front of you. There's just one thing that I wanted to add, which was a little, I guess it was last week. We were informed that the Cherokee Nation Finance Department won the Government Finance Officer Association's Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the fiscal year 2020. So that is an award we've won for multiple years in a row now, and so especially proud of this one because this was in the middle of a pandemic, and to continue producing that level of work when things are as hectic as they were and staff was on admin leave and everything else. Extremely proud of that budget department. So with that, I'll open up to any questions about my regular report.
Looks like we beat you up enough in the last meeting that we're going to give you a pass right now, but don't go away.
I will not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Diane Kelly, I saw her out there. Take it away, Diane. Would you turn your mic on?
Please. Apologize. I thought it was on. You've got my written report, and it has a lot of information about economic development and all of the things that we're doing with the grants. And we've also spotlighted several of our participants who actually have obtained really good jobs. And we've highlighted some of the programs that we're working in with the PPE, and we're doing some of the recruitment for the food processing. We are going after 3 grants this month. This is our grant season right now. We are looking at a Women in Non-Traditional Jobs. It's an apprenticeship grant. Josh Drywater and Hunter Palmer are working on that. And we also have a research grant, which involves TANF, and we've got 2 of the staff that are working on that with Kim Carroll. And then we also have a juvenile justice. We're going to slant it towards the juvenile aspect of it. We were told that there was several juveniles in the court system that we needed to look at. So Matt and Brenda Fitzgerald are working on that. So we have some deadlines in June to try to get those in. So we're trying to bring in some other resources to add to our other grants that we have. We have been doing a lot of recruitment fairs. Some of them have been virtual. We have 2 new trailers, they're classroom trailers, and they've got wraps on them, and we'll be able to use those for drive-by recruitment fairs. We're real excited. Hunter got those in this past week, and then we also have a digital display that we showed off at the Stillwell Strawberry Festival, and we'll be using our digital display to show the different types of training that we're recruiting for, as well as our jobs. So we're really working hard in the economic development arena, and a lot of the staff are networking with all of the different businesses in the 14-county area. So I think you're going to see a lot more jobs whenever the unemployment runs out. We'll probably have a lot of people on our doorstep wanting into training or into jobs. So just wanted to share that with you. Do y'all have any questions? JD?
Some people in Tulsa have just asked about maybe adding the asphalt and concrete classes and joining with like APAC and some of the bigger plants, because there's only a couple that do that, and it might be able to lead them into starting their own business, because there's been a lack of businesses that can actually lay asphalt.
Okay.
So
if you could get the information to us, Councilman Deere, we'd be glad to sit down with them and see what we can do as far as developing some sort of a customized training up in that area for those people.
Yeah, because it's not something you can just go out here and lay it and go.
No, you're right.
It's a different type, so.
I'm sure Michael Lynn would appreciate that.
Yeah, I bet. So I'll go with Hunter too, so.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else have anything? Yes, Councilor Duncan?
Diane, I just wanted to ask for some clarification. I think in the past, you talked about the lineman program. So is that lineman program our operated program that we just partner with ITC, or I just need some clarification on that?
It is our program. It's one of our training programs through the Cherokee Career Readiness. We actually started the program, but we have a cooperative agreement with Oklahoma State Tech, and they provide the instruction for the class, and they're the ones who help us to get those people through the program and get them certified. So it's just like if we contracted with ICTC or Northeast Tech, that they're basically coming here to do the training, and it's our training program, and it's all of our students that we run through the program.
Anything else? I do want to kind of make an acknowledgement in the economic development section here and on-the-job training. Ray Corporation from Pryor has been very instrumental in working with Career Services. They've worked with the reentry program throughout the years, just been a real good partner. Their founder, Jim Swank, passed away just recently within the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to recognize the fact, I mean, the company will go on and it will continue to do good work, but it was his attitude towards giving people a leg up and helping. They're just a great company, and so I'm glad we're partnering with them, and I just kind of want to thank the family for him starting that and working so well with Cherokee Nation.
Thank you, Councilman Taylor. We acknowledged him back a couple of years ago at our tarot banquet, and he had a vision of helping those people who come out of incarceration, and as a result of it, it opened the door in the park for maybe a couple of other businesses to do the same thing. So, yeah, he actually was very instrumental in helping us, and I can't say enough about the band.
Okay. Is there no other questions for Diana? We'll let you go.
Thank you.
And I see that Chuck Garrett is on the line now.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, councilors. The detail of CMB's April financial performance was summarized in the executive and finance report that you previously received. But I do have some few particular results that I'd like to highlight. In our gaming and hospitality business, I'm very pleased to report that C&E's April revenue was the second strongest since the pandemic began in March 2020. I think this shows that our team's hard work is paying off and we are trending in the right direction. I expect this trend to continue as we further loosen operational restrictions in light of fewer COVID cases and hospitalizations. As most of you know, we lifted our mandatory masking requirement for our guests starting on Friday, May 14th. This was a welcomed evolution in our responsible hospitality program. We have also resumed retail gaming at West Salem Springs Smoke Shop and Roland Travel Plaza. Via our Voice of the Guest surveys, we have received many patron inquiries as to our no dancing and no smoking policies. Several of you have also received those inquiries. I'd just like to assure you that we are in the process of reviewing those limitations to keep pace with the changing environment as more of our employees and our patrons are becoming vaccinated. In our federal contracting business, I'm so proud of the tremendous year that we're having at Cherokee Federal. In April, our Mission Solutions Division was awarded a very major contract through the Office of Refugee Settlement to aid in the care of unaccompanied children near the southern border of the U.S. This humanitarian work would make each of you very proud. We have many Tulsa-based employees in Pomona, California right now, working literally around the clock to help the federal government deal with the crisis and to provide a human touch to the children as they are ultimately settled. That, Madam Chair, concludes my report. I'm very happy to try and answer any questions that you all may have.
Are we closer to having any more occupants than at our shopping center here in Tahlequah? Newt's doing really well. I mean, that's a very popular venue we have there. And, look like, I call it the Gray Wolf. I don't know why. But Gray Wolf is doing real well. Fine food, and we utilize their food here at the Tribe. But do we have any other people that are on the short list, or any restaurants that we're going to bring to that mall there?
I sure hope so, Speaker. And we, prior to the pandemic, we were in discussions, actually pretty advanced discussions with one local restaurateur and a couple of national chains. When the pandemic hit, things kind of came to a screeching halt. We've tried to renew some of those discussions, and I think as things have, coast is getting somewhat clearer, we expect we'll be having some inquiries, especially now that the hotel is done, and of course we've got now some of the National Archives in the plaza as well. So foot traffic is going to be increasing, and I think you're right. I mean, Nukes has proven to be very popular and is enjoying some success. So I think other restaurateurs in particular will be noticing that. Our Starbucks has been doing extremely well.
Yes.
We're quite pleased with the financial results they're experiencing. So I think what we're showing, and what we all know, is that Tahlequah has a dynamic market, and it's a growing market. And as our healthcare system and continues to grow, and the other infrastructure in Tahlequah, I think we'll be finding some tenants for the plaza.
Yeah, maybe a Panera Bread or Chick-fil-A. We're not allowing dancing and smoking. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's not that we like to have fun. And so no one accused us of not liking to have a little fun. We were trying, of course, to do the right thing, and we're reevaluating that. We're getting a lot of inquiries on that, and I know many of you are as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay, Counselor Shaw.
Hi, Chuck. Chuck, I wanted to ask you to keep on the lookout for some type of, job creation industry for our Cherokee citizens in Cherokee County and Adair County especially. Any type of industry you come upon, if you could possibly, fix it to where it could help employ these people, it would be greatly appreciated.
I'm really glad you said that, and Counselor, as you may know, my family is from Adair County. I've spent a good chunk of my life in and out of Adair County, so it's certainly near and dear to my heart as well. I would mention to you, and Ms. Kelly and I have worked together on this initiative along with many others in the government and various departments. But we have been working alongside our consultant friends at Bain and Company to really look at some various innovative economic development initiatives that we can focus on that would do exactly what you're describing, that would focus on growing the economy of the 14 counties and looking at ways to grow existing businesses, recruit new businesses, and lend a hand to those that need to connect with various job trainings, et cetera. So it is central to our mission. We take that very seriously. And we think we can do both, grow the economy of the local Cherokee Nation and the local economies within that reservation, as well as growing C&B's bottom line outside of the reservation. So it's a full, multi-front fight that we're fighting, and so we're committed to that, I can assure you. But hearing from you also reminds me that I failed to give a brief update on the Arkansas Gaming Initiative. And there has been an event that I want to report on. As I mentioned last time, we were expecting to have a trial court hearing in Pulaski County in Little Rock, which we did. And the Judge Fox, took that under consideration. After a couple of weeks of his analysis, he reaffirmed his original holding, which was in favor of Gulfside Casinos, which is our competitor there. As I mentioned to you last time, that was not a particularly important event in that either side, whichever side was prevailing, the other side was going to appeal to the Arkansas Supreme Court. That appeal is underway right now. We've already appealed that, and the Arkansas Supreme Court will be hearing that case from the beginning, as if they were the only court to have heard that. So the trial court activity is relatively moot at this point. And that hearing is expected in sort of mid-fall. We don't know a date yet, but that's our best guess, and we'll certainly keep you apprised of that.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we will move on. Let Mr. Garrett go. We appreciate.
I got one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Who? Okay.
Are you doing a radio show today, or? I didn't know you was a DJ.
Yeah, well, we're spinning records all night, no dancing.
No dancing.
No, we're showing off some new equipment, Councilor Smith. We are in an office today where we're doing some other work, and we decided that we would try to represent the company well with some lighting and some good sound equipment, and so we're hoping to address this thing a little bit.
Well, it works good.
Good.
Thank you, Chuck. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you all very much.
All right, Ann and I, always at the ready.
Good afternoon. You all have a copy of my report. I would just like to highlight that we're on track to probably make over $3 million in business loans this year, so the activity has really picked up. And I just want to point out, over the last 10 years, 11 years, we've loaned out over $19 million to 357 businesses, creating almost 160 jobs a year. So keep in mind, your small businesses are the people that are employing the majority of people in the community. So I just wanted to point that out. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't know if anybody has any questions, but something that jumped out on me on your grant applications, you got $55,000 for the VITA program, and that returned how much in returns for our citizens?
almost $3 million.
Yeah, that is money very well spent, and I just want to commend your department for a return like that and for a service, and I look at it as protecting our citizens too, who might otherwise be taken advantage of, so good job.
Yes, thank you. I will pass that along.
Okay, looks like we're taking it easy on you today. I appreciate you being
Thank
here,
you.
Anna. Okay, that brings us down to our consent items. The tarot certifications were in your books. And awesome. I've got a motion and a second on the tarot certifications. All those in favor? Okay, community assistance is next. There was a new list.
I have some to add.
Okay, take it away, Jody Reese.
Council Deere, $500 for Native Arts Alliance. Correct. And Speaker Byrd, $500 each to all of his churches that he normally gives to, so.
Councilor Austin?
Yes, I'll need Tara Lee's input. I think she's right behind you there.
Tara Lee's busy.
On one thing. I want $360 to the Cherokee Phoenix to sponsor a newspaper rack at the Claremore Veterans Home. And then I want $750 to the Collinsville 4-H Club. And then the J.B. Milam marker rehab, is that coming out of special? Okay, I just want to make sure we were accounting for it here. Thank you.
What was the Collinsville again?
4-H.
What?
4-H.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Jody, I just have one to add, $250 to Oklahoma Indian All-State.
Okay.
Are there any other additions that we need to make? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposition? Okay, brings us down to law enforcement. There was a new sheet passed out. Looks like Dora, Daryl, and myself all had additions.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
Jody, I'd like an addition to the Delaware County Sheriff Department, $5,000. Thank you.
Counselor Shambaugh?
Jody, $5,000 to the District 13 DA's office.
5,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mike, why don't you go ahead and give us a motion? Because he's on the phone, that's why. Could I have a second? Motion and second on the law enforcement. All those in favor? Any opposition? Okay, roads, your projects are in your book. Thank you, Kanan. Thank you, second. All those in favor? Any opposition? There were a few new sports team funding. It's really just for your information. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposition? No new livestock. Okay, there's no old business, new business. Joe Deere?
It's a resolution expressly detailing the Cherokee Nation's plan to execute funding under the U.S. Treasury's guidance for the American Rescue Plan for the form of motion, but I got a suggestion I want to make.
Okay.
That we, it says in here 2 payments, and I suggest that we go with 1 payment because a lot of people, have been on social media. A lot of people have called about it. They prefer 2 payments. I mean, I think it's a good deal that the people have been heard. And that would be my suggestion, Madam Chair.
Okay. With that in mind, I'll need a second. Oh,
Second.
Counselor Shambaugh? Make the second, and then we'll.
On this matter, which does state that instead of getting the 1,000 this year and the 1,000 next year, that it is put into a lump sum and that it is paid this round.
Okay.
And
Okay,
if I-
is everybody clear what we're doing here, what we're talking about? One second.
2,000.
You still have the floor.
Yes.
Are you done?
Yes, if you pass those out, yes, ma'am. And I too, I had did a poll to ask the people what they preferred, and the people did prefer overwhelmingly to get one lump payment of 2,000 as opposed to 1,000 this year and 1,000 the next year. Also, there was people who, they didn't have they didn't care which way it went, so either way, they were just glad they were getting it. But I think we need to be informed on this matter. Well, Chief, could you say a couple of words, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Councilman, council members. Tara Lee's passing out the substitute mod, which reflects the lump sum $2,000 payment. If I could, Mr. Speaker, I want to first express my appreciation. A number of council members have reached out to me directly or to our staff since we began talking about this resolution several weeks ago. And some of those suggestions end up in these modified versions, including the suggestion of doing the lump sum. And what we'd like to do from an administration standpoint is extend that deadline into 2021. We'll get a date certain, but it seems to me a minimum of a year from now would be appropriate to give people time to get their citizenship. There's babies on the way, as we know, and make sure that they're included. The original intent was to make sure, again, we captured citizens who, newborns and those getting their citizenship, but I think if we do one lump sum but extend the application period through at least a year, that'll give people an opportunity to do that. We also are undertaking steps to do more overtime in registration and even expand registration into a second shift. We're exploring that so that we keep up with the demand. I mean, if you've gone through the hallways in the last week, you've seen that a lot of our citizens have heard about the proposal and are interested in making sure their address is updated and that their children in particular are citizens of the Cherokee Nation. That is a good and positive thing. More broadly, if I could, Mr. Speaker, and this is sort of echoing the discussions we've had over the last few weeks, this is a broad plan about how to go about being more precise in how we spend $1.8 billion. This is not an appropriations bill in front of you, this resolution. But it's such a large amount of money, it's such an unprecedented amount of money, that it seemed prudent to put forward categories of spending. Those categories reflect priorities that this body works on month in and month out, in which we work on in administration. This is a place to start, not a place to end. This is something that's can be modified as we go forward, and it probably should be as we go forward. What this does is it begins some really good discussion, I think, about these individual categories. I mean, for example, there's a significant amount of money for mental health, behavioral health, health care. Last night we had a town hall virtual meeting on health care, and I learned a great deal from citizens about ideas. I think that's what this is going to spark, is those kinds of discussions. We know what the priorities are of the Cherokee Nation. We work on them all the time. Now we can really drill down in the weeks and months ahead and even years ahead to identify how best to use this money. These dollars, Mr. Speaker, can be not only immediately beneficial to the Cherokee people, because we are still responding to COVID, we are still recovering from COVID, but it can have generational impact in a way that we've not had, I think, the opportunity to do it before. So if you look through here, you see a lot of big dollar amounts in broad categories, but we're going to work with the council and we're going to listen to the public about how more precisely we determine, for example, how best to use $120 million in housing funds. The other thing I'll say is that you do have a budget modification that will be discussed later in the agenda. It's important there to note that of this $1.8 billion, what's really being appropriated is enough to cover the citizen payments. So there's really nothing more that's being appropriated. That will come in future months when we get these plans developed and we decide how to best address housing, education, economic impact, infrastructure. So I have heard some discussion quickly. In my view, when you have $1.8 billion in the bank, you should move with some haste to get a broad plan together, and then you should move very carefully, as we plan to do, to get the fine points of that plan hammered out. That is what this is about. It's not about handing the executive branch $1.8 billion, because as everyone that can read the appropriation measure knows, we're not doing that. But I do think that part is something that should be done immediately. The Cherokee people are still hurting from the impact of COVID through health care, through the economy, and we need to extend them some relief. And again, I appreciate the leadership of the council members who came to us and said, look, we should do a lump sum payment. Makes sense to do it, and that's what we are proposing now. The other thing I want to do, and Councilor Coates is participating virtually, but one of the conversations we had after the initial proposal was sent out was, can we do more to really address the root causes of poverty? Can we do something beyond giving direct payments? And that really resonated with me from the conversation I had with Councilor Coates, and we went back and we looked at the additional funds that we had after Treasury sent them. And so you do see a broad category in here for a bridge program. That in and of itself, though, needs your input, and it needs the public's input. We need to figure out ways to do things to address sort of the cyclical nature of poverty in some parts of the Cherokee Nation. It's really kind of in all different parts of the Cherokee Nation. We need to be creative, I think, and seize this opportunity to address that problem in particular. So I appreciate Councilor Coates' suggestion on that. But there's an example of where it's an idea, but we're going to spend weeks and months and even the next few years determining collectively how best to do this. So I do want to push back a bit on some of the discussion I've heard, not in this body, but publicly, that we are rushing into things. It's simply not the case if you drill down and look at what the narrative really is. It is about a big plan, and Mr. Speaker, you and I have been in public service for a while, and I don't think we've seen this kind of opportunity come to the Cherokee Nation. I think it's our jobs to seize it, and I think this is the first step in what will be a long journey in seizing that opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair. Chief, I am glad that you're taking the time to get with your upper echelon executive directors, cabinet level people, and getting away from the tribe somewhere and putting a strategic plan together. Because this is a resolution. You know, it's not a legislative act, and we'll have our financial person from the council read the different categories for our viewers here in a bit. And I just want him to give the percentages that we're allocating some of these funds, or what's being proposed, okay? And that's what I was telling some of the people that's called me. This is a proposal. We don't approve proposals, but we do approve the budget for what you are proposing there. That's the council's responsibility. But I am so glad that you're going to take your upper echelon, go back and review and make some recommendations, and come up with a plan to fund these different categories. But Jody, I'd like for you to just read some of those topics and give the percentages that's been proposed for the viewers.
And Mr. Speaker, if I could, there is one scrivener's error on this version. It says December 31st is the deadline to spend it of 2024. I believe should say 31st, says 21st, so we can correct that in the final measure. But thank you, Mr. Speaker, and
okay. Did you note that, Shelley, that change? Okay.
Do not leave. I found out just today after I got here that there has been actually a special helpline set up just for this Gadoogie portal. I think that the majority of us can say that most of the calls we've gotten this week have been in regards to that. Could you go ahead and give that number so that anybody watching will have access to that?
Right. It's my personal cell number. No, it's not that. Although
I can give it then.
I did have a former council colleague put my email address on, which is fine, other than it, you know, you need to cut out the middleman on these things. It is 918-453-5001. We do have an email address, and I don't have that right at hand, but we will circulate that. We intend to issue some public information with that as well. I will tell you candidly, the biggest concern I have, is a concern I think you all have, is to make sure we can take what is something the Cherokee Nation has never done at this level, which is this amount of payment for this amount of citizens. We're using technology because we think that's the best way to manage it. But I commit to you this, councilors and Mr. Speaker, we know that there are citizens that are going to find it impossible for connectivity reasons. Perhaps they're elders and they're not really using that technology. Many are, but some are not. We will commit the resources we need to and the staff we need to. And I even have in mind, you know, some of the community events that you all helped with last year with signups. We have to do that for our elders and those who lack connectivity. But if we don't lean heavily on the technology that we have, we've now brought ourselves, I think, into the modern era in terms of connecting with our citizens, I think we'll struggle mightily. But I think our best hope is to utilize this technology. The next time technology works perfectly will be the first time it works perfectly. So I suspect there will be some snags. We've already seen a few snags, but we have good people on it, and we will stay vigilant. You have my word.
Okay, would you repeat that number one more time? I don't think everybody was ready for that. Slowly.
Yep, 918-453-5001.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Jody, do you want to go ahead with the proposed broad
Okay.
outline?
Yes, the first item that was the main discussion was the individual assistance, 43.09%. It's a little over 785 million. The bridge anti-poverty program that he mentioned is 4.39%, 80 million. Government revenue replacement, 9.6%, 175 million. Payroll and hazard pay, 2.74%, 50 million. Vaccine, education, and outreach, 0.27%, 5 million. Workplace health and safety improvements, 4.39%, 80 million. Food security, 0.82%, 15 million. Housing, quarantine, and domestic violence, 6.59%, 120 million. PPE, 0.22%, 4 million. Community partners, CCO, 1.1%, 20 million. Job training, small business, economic impact, 5.49%, 100 million. Education, language, higher education relief and assistance, 6.59%, 120 million. Health infrastructure, behavioral health operations and wellness, 7.13%, 130 million. Transportation and infrastructure, including roads, water, and sanitation, 3.18%, 58 million. Broadband infrastructure, 3.57%, 65 million. And financial administration and support staff, 0.82%, 15 million.
Okay, very good. Julia, are you still on there? I just want to say I am jazzed about this bridge program, and I'm so glad that you brought it to the chief's attention, that that's something we've been missing, and that and the behavioral health is going to change Cherokee Nation for generations. So I want to thank you for leading the charge on that, Julia. Do you have anything to add? Councilor Duncan?
Just a point of clarification. So Councilor Deere made a motion, but that would be a standalone motion to change within the resolution.
That would be a friendly amendment
Yeah, but
to this.
But in order to get this passed, it would have to be not a standalone motion. It would be a motion to insert this resolution instead, which is what Councilor Shambaugh did. Just clarifying procedurally.
So can I rescind that and just go with that one, since they're doing the 2,000?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. So I'll rescind that motion.
Yeah.
Make a motion that we pass the substitute that was passed out.
Yes.
And then Shambaugh, were you the second?
Yeah, yes, I'll second. Yes, I'll second. But the one thing really quick, that we need to be aware of, what people are talking about a lot about this is our elders, maybe trying to get our elders taken care of rather quickly. There was a lot of questions about kids, and there was also a lot of questions about, husband and the wife. The wife has the email and the husband doesn't. So how do they do that? I mean, I think that we need to have a condensation of a lot of things here pretty quick to say, hey, these are some of the questions, and here's some of the answers to that question, so we can get them out to our people, because I guarantee you, we're all fixing to be bombed, and everybody's going to be. But there's also those people who say, I'm not getting on a computer, I've never been on a computer, and it ain't happening, so what about me? So those are kind of some of the questions that I read on that poll that they're asking. When does it take effect? If you guys pass it Thursday, when can we actually start getting on it? If we do have kids, does each kid have to have their own email, or can they be lumped in? I mean, those are the questions that some of the questions that I read from those comments.
And Mr. Speaker, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
I was just going to say, I think that is one of the purposes of that helpline, is there's always going to be some extenuating circumstance that nobody thought of. And so it's to get those before our IT and before our treasurer and before the governmental body to try and address.
Well, I want those answered myself, because I don't want to give, when somebody calls me, I don't want to give them that number, because I know that it's going to be overwhelmed, just like we had 48,000 people put in for one deal, and it was those numbers were overwhelmed. So can you imagine 300,000? So, I mean, I think we are going to take a ton of calls. I think we're going to have to be able to give people information, and I hate to, I'm going to say it, but we're going to have to probably help some people get their stuff online, because I've told people I will. And I know that's going to be something, but it's coming. And I just think that we need to be able to answer those questions and not put them to a number that they could possibly not get a human being. And man, that makes people upset. You know, I just, that's the way I want to approach it for myself. And I don't know. I think that's the way we need to be able to give those people answers.
Okay. Can I go to Councilor Coates? Does anybody?
Councilor Coates, you're up.
Okay, thank you. Are you all able to hear me?
We can now.
Okay, it wasn't working out earlier, I know. I have a question about the date, because I heard the chief say something, I think, about extending this into, he said 2021, I believe, but I think he meant 2022, because he followed up by saying approximately a year from now. Do we have anything like a firm date that we can put out to people as a deadline if we're going to do one lump sum payment?
Have we gotten that far yet, Chief?
We, assuming this is approved, we intend to finalize some of those things. We anticipate a year, and I apologize, Councilor Coates, you're correct, 2022. We anticipate a year-long application process. So from June 1st of this year, it would be open. It would close June 1st of next year. The ending date is something we still need to work on, and in some of our programs last year, we actually extended the ending date. But to be able to wrap it up at a date certain would be useful. And if I could just respond, I know there's a lot of questions that have arisen. We've started an FAQ, and we're going to expand that based on the feedback here today. And from what we've heard from citizens, we'll make sure that you get it. I'd also offer we'll do Gadugi portal training with the council. It's very, very basic, but it'd be good to be all in one place, maybe on a Zoom going through it, so you can help your constituents. And we'll make sure to get answers to those other questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Shaw.
Okay, and as a follow-up, can I, just one quick question. Do you anticipate some kind of a mail out to all of the at-large people on this, as well as was done with the earlier payment, just to let them know?
Yes, one thing that it would be cost efficient to coordinate on is we do the Anadisco magazine to everyone. And if we're already, I need to see where we are in the process of getting that. We may put that as an insert into the Anadisco. I'm just talking sort of like how we can do it most efficiently, but we do need to get the word out beyond just social media.
Thank you.
You good, Julia? Okay, Councilor Shaw.
Yes, I've been inundated with questions and people wanting to be involved on how this money is decided. My constituents are wanting a seat at the table. They're wanting us to ask their opinions and what they feel we need. They want to be involved in how this money is spent. And, you know, they want to talk to us to tell us what they think it should be. And here we are, we haven't even received the money with a proposed budget. And I guess I'm worried. I want my constituents to receive the money. Don't ever kid yourself on that. But I'm concerned that we're not involved. The council's had nothing to do with this budget. And I think that's our responsibilities is to legislate and budget. I would like to have my constituents tell me how they would like to see this money spent. And I know that's what they're wanting.
Madam Chair, if I could respond.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Counselor, it is absolutely correct that the council has a constitutional obligation and duty to appropriate funds and to provide oversight. In fact, the resolution carefully acknowledges that fact. It's not that the $1.8 billion is coming, it's that the $1.8 billion is here. Our option is to leave it sitting in a bank account, and both branches of government leave its duties on the table for a month. I don't think that's a good option. These are broad categories that are readily identifiable as things that Cherokee Nation already does. Many of your constituents are on the mental constituents the money. What's not being appropriated at all, the resolution appropriates exactly $0. What's not being appropriated is all the rest of the money. That comes in the weeks and months and years ahead as we develop these programs. And as we develop them, we'll continue to have the kind of dialogue that we've had. So this proposition that this vote is somehow closing the door on any further input ignores the plain language of the resolution. It ignores the budget process. It obscures what the Constitution demands of us, and I think it's up to us to make sure that our constituents and citizens understand a bit more about the budget process. It's a difficult process. We shouldn't expect them to all know it. We have to, I think, show the kind of leadership that comes with saying, look, this is our budget process. This is not a budget. It's not a budget, Counselor. It is a plan about how we would broadly spend this. You can, with confidence, go back to your constituents and say, I voted for this plan, and we also immediately sent out checks, or immediately made them available, and we also started a conversation about things like behavioral health, getting new health infrastructure, making sure we have an anti-poverty program that lifts people up, doesn't leave them behind. Make sure that we do things for education we've never done before. We're starting the conversation today, Counselor. We're not ending the conversation today. That is a fact, and it's demonstrable on the face of this resolution. I think you should tell your constituents that. I would tell any of them that called me on that.
And I would say encourage them to give you, all of us, to give feedback as to how you would like it split up. This is just a framework. In governmental accounting, there's a difference in appropriating the money and writing the checks. It's totally different. So do encourage them to reach out to you, tell you what they want.
I think a lot of at least my constituents have shared with me that they are concerned that we're not investing in our nation, in our government itself. And that they're pointing back to 1895 with the sale of the Cherokee outlet. It was $10 million. And they spent it up, and then we didn't have a nation, so to speak, or a chief for what, approximately 75 to 100 years there.
Well, Madam Chair, if I could respond briefly, I saw that comment on Facebook the other day. It was from a predecessor of mine, and that's a philosophy that some people have. That gets to the central question about whether we should issue checks at all. And if the council wants to have that debate, they can. But if anyone wants to appreciate whether the Cherokee people have given us feedback on whether federal COVID dollars should go to them, ask any of your colleagues, ask me, because I've spent the last year getting that feedback. Sometimes the criticism was constructive and had a little sting to it, and I appreciate that because I took this job and expect to get that sort of criticism. But I've heard it. I'm not going to be deaf to it. There's certainly room for a philosophical debate about whether we should issue direct checks to the Cherokee citizens from this sum of money. I think that this is an appropriate use of the money. The Cherokee people are hurting. I think that it is an absolute act of hyperbole and exaggeration for political purposes, not you, but some of the folks that have peddled this nonsense, that these checks are going to lead to the demise of the Cherokee Nation. Whoever said that, and I know one person who did, a predecessor of mine, apparently underestimates the strength of the Cherokee Nation. And I suspect there's not a single member of this body that underestimates the strength of the Cherokee Nation. I guarantee you, your chief doesn't underestimate the strength of the Cherokee Nation.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Councilor Crittenden?
Hey, Jody, what you read a while ago, not the
the figures or the percentages. Will you just read that list of like housing and?
Okay, individual assistance, the bridge anti-poverty program, government revenue replacement.
Microphone, Jody. Turn your mic on, please.
Sorry, let me start over. Individual assistance, the bridge anti-poverty program, government revenue replacement, payroll and hazard pay, vaccine education and outreach, workplace health and safety improvements, food security, housing, quarantine and domestic violence, PPE, community partners, CCO, job training, small business and economic impact, education, language, higher education relief and assistance, health infrastructure, behavioral health operations and wellness, transportation and infrastructure, including roads, water, and sanitation, broadband infrastructure, financial admin and support staff.
Okay, thank you. I was wanting to point out that what you just read, those are my constituents' wants and needs. And like I said in the conference call the other day, most of what he just read was our platforms, or they should have been. Health, education, housing, woo, that's a biggie. And what a place to start the conversation with all of those. And going back to our constituents, that, like I said, that is the cause that I've got for 6 years. And someone's been listening to their advocate, been listening to you guys, because I'm sure that's what most of your calls are about: health, education, homes, and the rest of that thing. That's why I'm proud to be a sponsor here. And it's when they call us, we can all have a conversation together with the administration and just give them our ideas and suggestions, and I believe 100% that we'll come up with something that's going to be great for our people. So I'm a proud sponsor of this, and I'll tell anybody that, because simply it's going to help a lot of people, and some of the needs need to be met fast. And so I'll just leave that there. I appreciate you all, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Austin. Sean is quite the orator. Junior?
Yes, I'm very excited about this, Chief. I think you hit it right on. You nailed that one. So we're excited, and it's going to be a big year. And I appreciate you doing the 2,000. I'm a very proud sponsor.
Councilor Buzzard?
Yes, I want to thank the chief for getting this framework put together. Although I've had a lot of calls, like Councilor Shaw, they're about moving too fast about it. And I've taken that to heart. I think what some of them are saying, we see what's on the framework here, but we don't see what's going to go into the framework. And they want that input. Like, I'm just going to use one, housing. What are we going to do with housing, or our government replacement revenue? You know, where's that $175 million? We don't have anything to go by on that. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to give a friendly amendment to this resolution and just talk about it. What I'd like to do is take the individual assistance out and vote on that, and then take these points here and vote on that to see if we couldn't delay that for so many days to have citizens' input. So I want to make that friendly amendment to do that right at this time, sir, Madam Chair.
Okay, so that will be up to the...
You got one more comment.
Okay, well, I think I have several. Councilor Coates?
Yes, thank you, and I realize I'm speaking for a second time ahead of some others, but I will confess to being balking at the number of 785 million dollars going out to in individual payments. And it was even less than that, and I was balking at half that amount, and that's why I approached the chief and the chief of staff about maybe we could start some programs that would actually change people's lives. Because the fact of the matter is that $2,000 is not going to change many people's lives, many of those who will be receiving it at least. And there are other ways that other things we could do with this money that would. And that's what led to the discussion about what is now being called the Bridges Out of Poverty program. The comment by Chief Hoskins, one of Chief Hoskins' predecessors, is one that has been in my mind as well, because it was something I taught for many, many, many years. And that outlet payment that was made in 1893, and I don't think that's what took down the Cherokee Nation government. I mean, the United States at that time was just hell-bent on taking down the Cherokee Nation government, and it was going to do that no matter what. What I look to more is the payment, what some of our elders may remember as the big payment that was made in 1962. That was additional funds from that Cherokee outlet sale that we were awarded that year by the Indian Claims Commission. And that did amount to just paltry, small payments to people. And we think about what could have been done with that money at the time when the Cherokee Nation, wasn't a functioning government to speak of at that time. We were able to use a little bit of it towards that purposes, and that was the seed money for the nation as we know it today. So I too have had all of these thoughts in my mind as I'm looking at this, but I'm grateful for the willingness to listen and to really consider and to put $80 million to the Bridges Out of Poverty program, which I think, there will be a lot of ways in which that can potentially lead to more benefits for the nation itself if additional people can be relieved of needing services from the nation because we are enabling them to stand on their own. That's what all of us want to do. We want to stand on our own. And so that's the seed money. I'm hoping for that. We are in a different situation right now than we were in those times in the past. And this is my thinking about this. COVID-19 has just been devastating to so many people. So I consider a $2,000 payment a stopgap. It's not going to change most people's lives. But for many people, it will get them back to a place of equilibrium. For many others, it will prevent them from being evicted perhaps, or from falling behind on their mortgages further. I mean, there's any number of ways in which that payment really will be extremely meaningful to people. But even for middle class people in this nation, I think that with 40 years of growing wealth inequality in our country overall, there are just a lot of middle-class people who can benefit from this as well in ways that we really need to be paying attention to. And I know that when the federal government was making stimulus payments, there was a lot of outcry that people were just taking it and putting it into savings. Great, was my response to that. That's exactly what people should be doing with it. Putting it into savings, putting it into safe investments, just, because the inequality that exists in this country is such that even the middle class is being left behind at this point. So this is why I cringe at the thought of $785 million going out in personal payments in many respects. But I recognize the needs, and if we can do something, even for middle class folks, who are going to move forward without it, that we can still help to stake a future that they have been, falling further and further and further behind on for the last 40 years. So that's my thinking about this. We're not in the same situation that we were in 1962 or 1893 or even 5 years ago. And so I will vote for this for those reasons. And I'm not sure I would have done that if the administration had not been willing to put additional funding into the Bridges Out of Poverty, because that's the program that I'm really hoping can not just be a stopgap, but can really help us to change lives. And that's what we should be doing as a government. Thank you.
Well said, Councilor Coates, and something that you alluded to is families that may have had some emergency savings in 2019 likely have used that emergency in one way or another over the last 18 months, so that's a good point that you make. Okay, is there any, yes, Councilor Shambaugh?
And one thing that I did leave out from the comments on that straw poll, the reasons why they were so happy to get this money is just what Councilman Coates said. COVID has still impacted families hugely. There's unpaid bills that they were just so happy they were going to get paid for. Health, whether it was health, whether it was their just everyday life things that people are behind. And I'm telling you, they are thanking us for doing this, and this is greatly needed. Yeah, that is a ton of money, but you know, all I heard long ago is, why isn't Cherokee Nation helping their citizens? Well, you know what? By God, we have a chance to help our citizens now. And I'm on board 100%. And that being said, I say this out of respect, but I'm going to have to refuse your friendly, Councilman Buzzard, because I think that the way it is set up now and the way it was explained, you know, there's wiggle room down the road on how we're going to do this, and we are still going to have to justify how the money is spent through this council. So for that reasons, I will have to refuse it.
Just to respond to Councilor Shambaugh, I think what people are wanting to see, and I think I've talked to the chief about it too, they want to see a little more in depth of what these particular things mean. I mean, like, and I'll just give you a good example. We went out and purchased property and land the last time, and it wasn't in there. So I think that's what people are telling me, Chief, that they want to see a little bit more of a plan that you've got. I think this is great you've done this, because it's a good. You got to start someplace, and the framework's where you started. But what I'm hearing from people, they want a little bit more time to have input to, not particularly me, but to council members to bring to you and to bring to this committee. So that's what I'm saying. So,
Madam Chair, if I could respond just briefly, and Councilor, that's one of the reasons you don't see a great deal of specificity in there, is because we're mindful that we need that input. And even though there are some dollars appropriated in these categories, in terms of actual programs, except for the ones that exist that we need to support, we need to be thinking of those ideas. We need to share with the council. We need to get feedback, and we can get public feedback. I mean, last night's forum, I hope we archive that and replay it. You all will see what enlightened me, which is this real-time feedback. So I commit to you, sir, that we will continue to get feedback and fill in these blanks.
Go.
It's a hard place to know where to start on breaking down this amount of money. When we first heard about it last week, the early estimate was $900 million, and the estimate alone was off by $1 billion. And when the first estimate came out, we seen the same program Beyond the Bridge, which I'm glad Councilor Coates brought up. It's greatly needed. Within 24 hours after receiving additional $1 billion of the estimated allocation come forward, we already had a new proposed spending plan. And though I can appreciate the ideas behind putting lump sums in different places, there just is a lot of questions that we still don't have answered from where we were sitting here just a year ago when we were faced with this pandemic, but yet we were getting ready to appropriate, I think the first amount was $300 million of CARES Act funds. And though I really thought initially we were starting to spend the money properly, but it quickly started diverting to businesses and self-interests on sound stages and land purchases that had nothing to do with getting our citizens back on their feet. And that's where the outrage came from my constituents on why they weren't getting more help. And so I am glad to see the individual assistance there, though I don't agree with the way it was rolled out quickly, hastily, and just rushing to $1,000, then it was quickly to $2,000. And I don't even know where those estimates were based out of. It was just like it came out of thin air. I think they're worth $1,000. Well, I think they're worth $2,000. I think that should suffice for the issues that they ran into over the past year. But when I drove through a lot of the different districts within the past week, I noticed there was so much that was hurting that we needed to address. But how do we go about addressing it? Is it just simply saying we're going to put, $120 million to housing? I don't know. I don't know if that's enough. I haven't been able to invest time and research into it. And I think that, as this council body, I think it's really just a great opportunity for us to possibly even go and create a sub-E&F group that's specifically catering to just this amount of money. Because people brought up the land sale and where that we're still left in poverty after we spent that. But more importantly, those communities that we all grew up around knowing about, a lot of our in-district counselors, they know about these places, Cherry Tree, Kenwood, Greasy, Bunch. These communities are the ones that thrive our language. They thrive in our culture, but they are dying as a community. And last year, that money didn't help any of them. And I can't tell you if all this money that's being proposed is going to do that, as there's nothing broke down into it. I know obviously we'll get to that when we go through the legislative act, so I don't want to take a lot of time here. But whenever I heard that the chief mention that the legislative act is just going to address the individual assistance. Well, I don't see that here because the client services, which I'm assuming that is, or contracting, it's $602 million. On the individual assistance here, $785. I also see the $175 million governor revenue replacement still there as being in our transfer out. So it's not just what was being said that we're going to spend just the individual assistance. And that's the reason why I would like to second Harley's buzzard to split this up and to be able to vote on it on the proposed allocations. I think it's something that we need to address in the legislative act in the next meeting, but it's definitely something as a concern to just say, here's the lines that we want to see placed. I don't know if I can sit there and say, I want to pass, and I think we need to put 175 in government replacement revenue. I don't see that there. I do see that I'd like to pass the individual assistance. So breaking it down for me would be allowing to vote based off of what my constituents have been telling me. And if I sit here and vote no, I'm going to be saying I'm against individual assistance when that's something that I've been for early on. So that's the reason why I second Harley's. Appreciate it.
Okay, let me clarify something. The friendly amendment is not something to be seconded. The friendly amendment is something that the offer and the second of this legislation can accept or not accept at the end of discussion, and then we vote on whichever form passes. So that is not really on the table here. And secondly, when we thought we were getting $900 million, I've got the original proposed spending, and the bridge program is not in here. So it was after we got the final budget allocation that, and Counselor Coates brought that up, that was added. So we're going to move on. Counselor Austin, I don't think you have spoken to this issue yet.
Thank you. You know, this is such an exciting opportunity for us as Cherokee people to have this amount of money to invest in our people and our future at the same time. We've got over $1 billion left to spend in investment in our people and our communities, and in the things the priorities that they have told us that they want us to spend money on. We have unprecedented amounts of money to spend on housing security, on domestic violence, on education, language, food security. This is an unprecedented situation we find ourselves in to be able to do this. This is not a final spending plan. This is a list of priorities. This is a list of priorities of where we want this to aim. None of these numbers all these numbers except the very top one end in zero. That means that's not an exact amount. This is a guideline that we're aiming at, but these are the places where we want to make a difference. And we have an unprecedented opportunity to do that. We have the opportunity to not only get people on their feet, but keep them on their feet. Keep them on their feet with this investment in the community. Keep the communities thriving with the investment in the community. Unprecedented opportunity for us to do that. And we seem to have short memories sometimes. Last year, did we invest in our people? We invested in utility assistance, tech stipend, elder payments, veterans payments, food assistance. We created jobs in small communities. We created investments that will have lasting impact on many, many small communities with the money that we spent last year. That money did not go without benefit to our people and our communities. Much, much, much of what we spent last year was spent directly to benefit people and keep them whole while they were going through the most horrific, unknown situation of any of our lifetimes. And we should celebrate what we were able to do last year, and we should be celebrating what we're able to do now and into the future with this plan. I fully support it. Thank you.
I need to make a closing comment. I haven't commented yet.
Okay.
You know, I think this is a good thing, and I'm going to support it, because when I think of my family back in Sequoia County where all the speakers are, this will make a difference in their lives. The way you went about it bothers me a little bit. I saw it on Channel 6 about a week ago. And then, however way you vote now, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You need a good guy, a bad guy there. But we're going to support it. Now, as the traditional Cherokees, as I talk to them, don't be a Cherokee because we're giving $1,000 every year. Don't be lining up at our doors because we're finally giving money away to be a Cherokee. Become a Cherokee because you're proud of who you are. You're going to continue to fight for the sovereignty that my parents, grandparents, your grandparents fought for. So that's going to be my closing comment. Become a Cherokee, not because we're giving $1,000 away every other year. Well,
I want it known that I am appreciative that this includes individual assistance for every Cherokee, because I do represent the at-large. They often don't relate to what is happening back here in jurisdiction. And this is something that's going to help the very people that put me here, and for that I'm grateful.
Okay, Councilor Deere, you have closing comments?
Yeah, I just, sort of what Councilor Austin said, just going to reiterate that, you know, we just finished a time with COVID a year ago. That's why we're wearing masks. And we got appropriated a bunch of money from the government, then we worked through it. We did basically the same process. They came through it. You know, the employees came at the Hard Rock, and they now have a clinic. We did food distribution all over the place. I've dealt with line items all my life in math and budgets. You could even break it down to your simple house budget. You know, you get $800 a week, $500 a week. You know, you wait to pay your bills a month because you don't know if you want to pay electric. That's $100. It's just on a bigger scale from what we just completed. And hats off to Trey. You know, how many nights did she stay here? I mean, don't forget what we just went through. You know, look at what we've been through and see where we're going. This is going to leave a mark for generations on health and housing. Yeah, it says housing for $150 million. It could be senior housing. It could be housing in my district. It could be housing in West. But it's housing. Self-governance at its best is what's going on. And people need to understand that. Don't forget where you came from. That's the history. Know where you're going. So, with that being said, Mr. Buzzard, I'll be just refusing that and the friendly and going on because we need the framework. We need to get going. If some of you guys pay attention to other tribes, you'll see that their council does not work their administration. And when they get this money, they can't go anywhere. They're stuck. We're growing. Just look around. Look in Canaan and Crenton. I got to put them together because they always together. But, you know, I mean, that's a tough area. Adair, Shamballs, and Jay. I mean, COVID. We got through it. Look where we are. We're almost out of it. Now we've been blessed with $1.8 billion. Let's get the framework going. Let these guys go to work. They already said by using Mrs. Coates' deal, it wasn't on here. Simply go to these guys and tell them what you need. And you can ask the chief, I'll go tell him, here's what they want. Let's go, just do something. And we work things out. That's what you do as a community, as Cherokee people. So with that being said, that was my closing comment. But just don't forget where you came from, what we just been through. Look at this. I mean, this is a blessing. And the framework's there. And I'm sure if you have suggestions, you can email, call them. He'll answer the phone. Everybody knows Chief answers the phone. It's tough to get a hold of Todd, unless you're Sean. But besides that, that's my closing comments. Let the record show that Todd's tough to get a hold of. But with that being said, remember, we just passed an audit with the federal government. Correct, Trey? I mean, that's 4 audits. But yeah, that right there should say the work that's been completed by us. We are the legislative body. We did that. They're administrative body. That's why we're here. So I'm sure this will change. It's just a framework, but we need to get to work. And with that closing comment, I appreciate it. Admin, Chair. Thank you.
Councilor Duncan, I think you were the second on this proposal.
I thought it was too, but I checked with Shelley and it was Mr. Deere, Mr. Shamball. But
okay.
If you have me as a second, I also refuse that friendly.
Councilor Shamball? You already did. Okay, so we are down to a vote, but I do want to ask Trey, what do you think the chances are that we will be audited on this as well? Let's see, less than 99%? That's what I figured. Okay, we are going to vote on the legislation.
Madam Chair, I just had one question just to clarify and it'll help me with my constituents that I'd like to ask. Because I think that what Harley and I are getting at and what a lot of the constituents that I've spoken to about this proposed spending plan, I think the chief could answer this and I think it would help out. Because it's just a proposal, if we said we wanted to spend instead of 120 for housing, we spent 140, that's going to come through a legislative act anyways, correct?
Yes, Councilman and Madam Chair. Anytime we would deviate from this plan, we would come back and say we need to change the plan. That's the reason for this plan. So we have a meeting of the minds, but we have to re-meet if we need to adjust, and we will. And I committed to that from the beginning. In fact, some of the meetings that I'd say just about every one of you attended, some of the Zoom meetings, we discussed that very point.
Okay, it's just not, it doesn't require and it doesn't bind the council to having to appropriate the 120 million, that's all, to housing, if that was the suggestion.
It's
right?
just like if you spend $100 a week on groceries for your family, you might want chicken this week and you might want roast next week. It's all in the grocery budget. Okay, Councilor Crittenden. Promise to make it short.
Just follow it. Chief, now you're going to continue these conference calls with us, aren't you? On these things that come up, different ideas. And,
yes,
you know, a lot of times that's where I take what my constituents talk to me about, and you're there a lot of times with the Attorney General. The main guys are on a phone call with us. Any more questions? and it sounds like a ghost town most of the time. I mean, any more questions? Are you sure? Any more? And I don't hear a lot of questions on there. So just, I mean, that's easy. All right, Chief, thank you for having this handy little number here. Hit that button and there you are. So you're going to continue doing that?
That is my commitment. We'll continue that.
All right, and I like that little avenue. It makes it easy, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You betcha. Counselor Dorr.
I just want to say that I am not normally on Sean Crittenden's Zoom calls.
Okay, Counselor Dobbins has called for the question here, so we are going to vote on this, and keep in mind the change that was made, that it would be a one-time payment of $2,000 versus $1,000 this year, $1,000 next year. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. This brings us down to number 2 on our agenda. Counselor Austin, are you there? I am. Thank you.
This is an act amending Legislative Act 1620, authorizing the comprehensive capital budget for fiscal year 2021, Mod 5, and declaring an emergency. I move for its approval.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do you want Jody to go over this with you, or the information you have enough and we can vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay. Brings us down to number 3. JD, would you take that?
This is an act amending Legislative Act 17-20, authorizing the comprehensive operating budget for fiscal year 2020, Mod 8, and declaring emergency. I put that in form of motion. 8.
8.
Yeah, we do have.
8A, sorry.
The substitute was the Mod 8A that was emailed out to you guys last night, and I think she has a handout.
Does everybody have a handout?
Wait a minute. Do we have a second? Did we get a second?
Yeah, I got it. No, not yet.
Okay.
And then based upon the the modification a while ago, we will need to change, it won't change the total or anything of 8A, but it will move some of the amounts out of the reserve by appropriation into the client services account.
The total will stay the same?
Yes.
Right now, the original total is, of course, the 1.8 billion. There was little over 1 billion appropriated, and 786 million in reserve by appropriation. And the revised total will be 1.4 billion appropriated and 394 million in reserve by appropriation.
Okay, one thing that I want to add is we have added back in this, it's almost 34 million, not quite, that we pulled out of the last budget we passed because we wanted more clarification on that. We've got basically itemized budget here by clinic, and I also see that we have Dr. Jones, and I think that's Amy with him. If there are further questions regarding the specifics of that, they're here to answer any questions that you have. So it's whatever council wants. If you want to have them come in and go over it line by line, that's what they're here for. If this printed document is enough, we will just go ahead and vote.
Call for vote.
Councilor Austin, did you have a comment, or you just have your mic on? And Councilor Deere, did you have something to say? And Councilor No Fire just has his at the ready. Go, Betty.
So this is the Act 17-20 Mod 8A, right? That includes, is this coming up for a special council meeting right now, or is this the one, the CSSR money?
Okay, so
I've got a bunch of different papers everywhere. So.
Let's go with this. The CSSR is the portion that you had asked to be pulled out of the last budget that we passed. And so what we have done, in the interest of time, was we went ahead and did the budget mod and added it on, to this 8A that we're going to pass and that we will also pass in the special council meeting. But this is the specifics of that 33 million that we pulled out of the last budget mod.
So.
Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you, because now I've got to get all the way back through to the, because it's going to be asking for the appropriation on the legislative act with $1.8 billion, correct? That's included in on this whole entire act.
We are adding it to, correct?
Correct. 8A includes the 33 million and the 1.8 billion.
Right, so the $1.8 billion can be discussed right now, since that's going to be passed right now. If you flip back over on the very last page, whenever we're going to our line item expenditures on that, those are all going to have to be adjusted based off of what we just passed on this resolution, saying that the $2,000 payment was going.
Right.
Okay.
It's going to change,
No, it just changes one.
it changes the
item
total,
on
it's
there.
just shifting, between two line items. And I'll have the budgets to hand out with the, original and the revised.
And then we have, so what's the cash out going to on the 175 million? Because if I look at the narrative on the COVID relief funds, the ARPA funds, it's just kind of a copy of the general law, but there's not a breakdown in the budget on what we're spending it on directly. I mean, you have that on there, who's the salary and wages going to for 12.7 million, reserved appropriation, that'll be set there for when we can appropriate later, 700 million, but that's gonna change if we've changed all this money over based off of where we're just trying to give all citizens a $2,000 payment.
All those line items aren't changing, it's just, we had, the $1,000 next year in reserve by appropriation. Now we're moving it over into this year, all in client services.
Okay.
Basically, all the other items besides the individual assistance, about half of it is in spendable accounts for this year, and half of it is in reserve by appropriation. There's some of them that the 175 million is all in, the hazard and payroll pay is all in, the food security is all in this year, and the PPE is all in. All the other accounts are budgeted at half.
Right, so see, this is where, and it's not it's just to addressing the council here on this, it's that this is where we were last year. We didn't have a detailed accounting expenditure on what we were appropriating. We're just moving the money into general accounts. And then from there, the administration's just gonna spend it out of that general account. We don't know exactly what, is there contract services to somebody, whereas when we pulled last month's budget mod and asked them what we were buying, we finally got it detailed in the best one that I've seen since being on this council of where we're gonna be spending the money. You can list out here, you got 2 mobile testing units, you got chemistry instruments, and a lot of them, I could have some questions about, but at least I know I can go back to my constituents and say, this is what we passed and what they're going to do with those funds. Now, whenever you have $105 million for capital acquisitions, what are we buying? There's no list out in detail agreement here. And last year, we got into a lot of issues of things being published on what the chief had spent on all these pet projects, such as, like I said, we noticed the sound studio, the land purchases, things that didn't help anybody. And, now we've just come out of this resolution of what they wanted to spend it on, and we have a legislative act here that doesn't have any meat to it on what we're doing, other than, here's a couple line items, that's it. I mean, I think that's where we are supposed to be accountable. And that's where, I can't vote for something like this if we were just splitting off and we were just voting directly for individual assistance out of the legislative act, which is what I thought we were doing, then yes, I'm for that. But if we're adding in $105 million for capital acquisitions, for what? I mean, that that's something that we don't have. And if I recollect, I think, Jody, you got this at what, 4 o'clock yesterday?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a lot of negligence if we're gonna be moving for something like that, because there's no account what we're gonna spend it on. They broke everything in half from what Jody's saying. What are they doing with those halves? Do we know? Are we gonna be getting something with them? I mean, I've got loads of different information coming from my citizens of what we could use out there, but I'm gonna go back to them and just say, I don't know. I can't do that.
Okay, and this is what we were discussing in the business item number 1, was we're putting it in buckets, and it will be distributed specifically at a later time. I mean, it's got to all come through the budget. So we've talked about that. So anybody else?
Yeah, it's come through the budget. I still have the floor, but it's come through the budget, but it doesn't come out with line item expenditures and what we're spending it on. And I've been sent information that on where we spent the money last time, that I think it's important that the council addresses. And, you know, I don't know. There is a big concern with what happened last year with where the money was moved to and where it was spent. You know, that's something that we're getting ready to do the exact same thing here, which is moving money without knowing where it's going to be spent. I can't stand for something like that. And I think we need to ask the treasurer, what are we purchasing with this money for $105 million? Treasurer, are you there, Traylina?
Well, I think we're still in the process of hammering that all out. So, I mean, we got the money, what, last week? We're still talking to people.
So why are we appropriating the funds then? If we don't know what we're buying, appropriating the funds, that's...
We're putting it in broad categories. That's how government accounting works. You have to separate it out.
Yeah, and responsible
we're not
government
writing checks.
Responsible government accounting goes, okay, this is what we're doing, and you can see it right here. That's responsible governmental accounting. This, with that kind of money, is negligence for government responsibility.
Well, I disagree with you.
Well, I know you disagree with me on that. And Speaker, if I may, I think we need to go into executive session because I have some information I'd like to share with this council on last year where we spent the money at, and it involves people that are tribal citizens, and I don't think it's worthy that we share it here in public.
Well, I'm leading this meeting, and so I would be the one that would call for executive session. And I think we have some other counselors that want to speak to this budget modification. So
they can speak, and the suggestion's already been made, and if you don't want to accept it, it's going to be bring right back up after they get through speaking.
Okay, that's fine. Are you through?
Yeah, I'm through. I mean, go ahead and ask. Does anybody else have something else to say? Go for it.
Councilor Shambaugh, I think you're waiting.
I've sat through a lot of meetings in 4 years. I've seen some good, lot of good things happen, and I've seen some bad things happen too. I don't know where respect has went. There's no reason to talk to each other like that, none whatsoever. But everything that comes through this council, we get to see it. We see what's passed, or we see what's being bought, and we voted on it. But you know, here's the deal. Whenever you say that there's things bought, some land and other things that had no reason to be bought, it was all voted on. And when you say that, you're slamming everybody in here who voted on it and that thought there was a need for it. There is a need for it. This, you know, it's going to affect our Cherokee people for the next how many generations? It's ours. That's our land. People get to go hunt, fish, gather. That's why they bought that. If we don't buy that, we don't have it. But we have something that we can have forever. For our kids and their kids, that's just the way it is. And we may have a different opinion of you, but I'm not going to attack you just because I have a different opinion than you do. But that's what you're doing, and we need to chill a little bit on that aspect on how we treat each other, because, You know, we all aren't ever going to agree. We have on things, and for the most part we will, but when we don't, there's a right way and a wrong way. And the respect part is, it's not really acceptable to me. I mean, we can talk normally and get more done than raising our voice and attacking different people just because you don't agree with maybe what everybody else does. Just saying. It's difficult. I just don't think it's right. I don't.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor.
Madam Chair, if I will. I think I called for something, but, you know, I have a council over here who thinks that I'm threatening this body or somehow I'm saying with encouraging that our council need not to make the mistake. I think a lot of citizens were upset with money that was being spent out of last year's funds. And if I speak with a little bit of volume because of all my citizens that's called me being upset about the money and what was spent, and it is our responsibility as a council to do that, then go on. If you think that I don't think I've ever said something to you that maybe offended you, but it's important that when there's something as a real concern, that you've got to say something. You got to speak up, and that's what I've done, and that's what I was elected to do. And that's why I'm trying to urge everybody that I feel it's a mistake to just blindly give this money over without knowing where it's going based off of last year and the people that's poured in on knowing and wanting to slow this thing down. I've not had one opportunity to meet in a gathering with my citizens because all of our buildings are shut down. They're still shut down. We still can't have councils, our citizens in here because we're still shut down and closed off from them. We are doing what's supposed to be the people's business, not in front of them, not engaging with them, which is what the U.S. Treasurer said to do before appropriating these funds because of the magnitude of it. And that is where I feel the irresponsibility that could be made if we don't slow it down a little bit. We have a lot of time to appropriate these funds. Individual assistance, you know, it was jumped out there a little too soon just to start waving it out there, but now we got to pass that. But everything else can just be on hold. There's no reason why we have to appropriate the rest until we have some real delivered plans on what we should do with that and engaging with our citizens, figuring out what district needs what. I know at large is way different than in district. My district's way different than Joe Deere's district. And there's things that could affect him and his citizens versus my citizens down here. But we need to engage and start that dialogue out there of what to do with these funds before just giving over checks. I don't want to have to go back every single time and try to hope and pray that the money I just gave over, I can somehow get a program going that my citizens are asking me to have out, you know, a month, 2 months from now. So that's why I had to say those things with such energy. Appreciate it.
Councilor.
I want to respond really quick. I guess if there are things like that, I would like to know from you what they are. Because you're saying that there's things that are wrong. I want to know what they are because you've said that, but you haven't told anybody. I want to know what you're talking about.
I can't share that within the council.
You can share it with me.
I could pull you off to the side, but I felt that
Absolutely.
it was best that the whole and council know, and the only way we could do that based off of it would be to go into executive session.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think Councilor No Fire is just passionate about his constituents. You know, he's given the message that his constituents are giving to him. But I still agree that it's time to move past this. I mean, you know, he made his point, and just because we disagree here doesn't mean we don't like each other. You know, that's the way we've operated so far. This is a democracy. You know, everybody has a voice. Then we vote. Then when we leave here, you know, we'll go out and maybe have dinner. But, you know, I don't take offense to his passion. I really don't, because I've been in more vocal meetings than this right here. You know, I've been on this for 18 years, so let's move forward. You know, we got a majority. If we're going to vote, let's vote and let's move on.
I do want to let Councilor Coates have her time. Bless her heart, her arm's probably about to fall off.
It's resting on a desk, thank you. I just want to make two quick points because I think we did already have this discussion substantively a couple of items ago. I think political speech takes time to learn, and I think that while impassioned and without the intent, we all have private thoughts about what we think other people are doing and what other people are, what their motivations are and so forth. But I think one of the things is to learn how to express ourselves in ways that don't imply that, we're allowed to have our thoughts, but, the implications even that people are engaged in wrongdoing or wrong thinking, it takes some time to learn how to frame things in a way that doesn't suggest that. So I would just maybe make that comment. The other comment I would make is that as far as executive session, it's not on the agenda. And those of us who are familiar with the agendas of the Election Commission, for instance, almost every month you see it on the agenda for executive session. If we change our agenda in any way, the proper way to do it would be to make a motion to go into executive session, to amend the agenda so that we can go into executive session, and it would require a second and a majority vote. So that's my only other comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a motion and a second on the floor on this operating budget. So all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay, are there any announcements? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. And how long do you want before the special council meeting?
Probably, Jody, you got to do some copying, or are you good? Okay, let's go 10 minutes.
Okay, that makes it 4:52.